Hey YouTube, my name's Amber and I'm with Skyway Acquisition. We're a consulting and training firm for federal contractors. Our mission is to help you thrive in GovCon. We have a unique blend of contracting officers and industry folks with a wide variety of experience and many, many years of contracting experience. This allows us to help you thrive in GovCon. This is the Skyway Spotlight series. Each of these videos, you'll learn about our team members and what makes Skyway so special. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started with today's episode.
Right.
Okay, so today in our Skyway Spotlight, I have Caity Hart with me, and we're going to talk about the where and the when. My first question for you, Caity, is where did you spend your career as a contracting officer?
So the first decade of my career, I was out of Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. During that time, I deployed 3 times to various parts of the Middle East and Africa. And then the last 2 years of my Air Force career, I've been out of Middletown, Pennsylvania.
Wonderful. And so you kind of gave us a little overview, but is there any historical events or things that you encountered that you would like to share with us today?
So I encountered several historic events. I was deployed during COVID, so I got to experience COVID from the perspective of a contingency contracting officer, where we had to deal with situations like countries being completely shut down, but we had troops in those countries and we still had contracts in those countries. I was stateside when the furlough happened in, gosh, when was that? I don't remember exactly when that happened, but as a military member going through the furlough, um, most of our civilian team members in our squadron were furloughed. They weren't there. So I was on a non-personal services team at the time. And so we had, you know, civilians who couldn't work. So we had to cover their contracts.
Right.
So we had to spend a lot of time issuing all the different notices that pertain to funding to contractors that we really had nothing to do with, and we had to familiarize ourselves really quickly to what's going on with those contracts. How do we technically keep those contracts alive without funding? So there was a lot of things that changed from one day to the next during that time. But it definitely got us to start thinking about, like, how do we think on our feet? How do we adapt to an ever-changing situation, which kind of helped during COVID because that was another ever-changing situation.
Right. Yeah. And then you just have limited people and the work still has to be done. So
Yep.
it's kind of one way or the other there.
During that time, we were on, I believe, a 5-person team, and suddenly we were down to 2 people. So
Wow.
it was interesting.
Definitely. And the fact that you got to stay is like honorable and great, but then also like, oh crap, now I have to do all these other people's jobs. So
Yeah.
like a double-edged sword there.
Yeah.
And so
To learn
how
how to
long
do
did you
paperwork real
spend,
quick.
right? And quickly, how long was your total career as a contracting officer?
So it's kind of hard to say because it would be, I'm a contracting officer, now I'm back to an administrator. Now I'm an officer, now I'm an administrator. It would go back and forth. I would
Okay.
say cumulative total, it was probably 4 or 5 years as
Awesome.
a contracting officer specifically. And that's, going back and forth between a contingency contracting officer or like a regular contracting officer. During some of the time that I was a contract administrator, though, I was also responsible for, training my peers and helping them learn how to be on our team. Or I would occasionally have to train people who were new to the contracting field as a whole. So if they cross-trained into it from a different career, oftentimes they would sit with me and I would kind of show them the ropes.
Right.
So I was usually in some sort of uh, either a contracting officer or a trainer role.
Excellent. Very cool. And I have one more question for you. Out of the places that you were deployed, do you have any place that was your favorite or that you would like want to go back to, or you're like, oh no, I'm good?
Absolutely. When I was in Africa, I was primarily stationed out of Djibouti, the actual base was called Camp Lemonnier. It was a naval base. But during that time, I got forwarded to Manda Bay. I believe it was called Camp Simba at the time. I was there for a few weeks, providing coverage because the contracting officer that was usually there had to go to Germany for a few weeks. And I absolutely fell in love with the area. I fell in love with wildlife. I mean, it was a tiny little base, but I would go on a 15-minute walk every day and I would walk the entire perimeter. The just everything about that environment felt so wholesome. It just felt like a family kind of feel, which oftentimes with those smaller bases that happens. But I also felt the most appreciated in my role out of that base. And that could have just been, from the camp commander. But that was my favorite place I've ever been.
Yeah, that's so cool. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm so glad you had that experience, and thank you for sharing that with us. And I think that concludes our video for today. So we'll catch you on the next one.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.